The window across the alley was a perfect, glowing rectangle of someone else's life. From his own small, cluttered apartment, Leo could see directly into its warmth. He was a writer, or at least he was trying to be, and his world had shrunk to the size of his desk and the view from it. The window became his silent television, his unwritten story. It belonged to a woman, he deduced. She was a painter. He watched her most evenings, after he'd given up on his own stubborn sentences. She moved with a quiet purpose in the soft lamplight of her studio, a space filled with canvases leaning against walls and the faint, ghostly shapes of charcoal sketches. He never saw her face clearly, but he saw her hands, graceful, often smudged with paint. She would stand back from a large canvas, head tilted, then move forward in a flurry of decisive strokes. She listened to classical music, he decided, something with cellos. He began to invent a life for her. Her name was Alara. She was kind, but with a core of steel. She drank her tea from a heavy, handmade mug. She had a small gray cat that would sometimes weave between her legs, a detail he confirmed one night when he saw the creature leap onto a windowsill. He felt a strange, proprietary pride in being right. His own life was a study in beige. The rejection emails piled up in his inbox like uninvited guests. His friends' voices on the phone grew increasingly distant, full of promotions and weddings. But Ilara's world was one of vibrant color and creation. Her window was a beacon. On nights when the blank page felt like a taunt, he would look up and see her there, working, and it would feel like permission to keep going. She was his unwitting muse. One Tuesday, he saw her struggling. She was pacing, running her hands through her hair. She stopped before a canvas and simply stared, her shoulders slumped in a posture of defeat he knew too well. An impulse, sharp and sudden, seized him. He scrapped the paragraph he was laboring over and wrote a new one. It was a description of a painter captured in a moment of doubt, finding a sudden spark of inspiration in the memory of the way light had hit a puddle on the street that morning. He wrote about how the memory transformed into a slash of gold on the canvas. He printed the page, folded it, and on the outside wrote a single word, persist. He didn't sign it. How could he? He was a stranger. The next evening he waited until the alley was deserted, folded the note into a paper airplane, and with a flick of his wrist, sent it sailing across the chasm. It caught an updraft, wobbled, and landed neatly on her fire escape. He held his breath. An hour later, he saw her find it. She picked it up, unfolded it, and read it. She looked out her window, directly into the darkness of his. He froze, feeling like a criminal. But she didn't look angry. She looked curious. Then she smiled a small, private smile. The next night, a reply arrived. A small painted rock, tied with a string, was lowered from her fire escape. Taped to it was a piece of sketchbook paper. On it, she had drawn a tiny, perfect typewriter, with a single word emerging from the roller. Thank you. And so a conversation began. It was a dialogue of objects and art, sent across the alley via their shared airspace. He sent her a page from a favorite poem. She sent back a miniature watercolor of a coffee cup, steam curling into the shape of a question mark. He sent her a vintage postcard of a lighthouse. She replied with a small abstract painting in bold blues and grays, which he decided was a stormy sea. They never waved. They never tried to meet on the street. The magic was in the distance, in the mystery. They were two satellites in separate orbits exchanging flashes of light. He found himself writing more freely, inspired by their silent exchange. His stories became less about his own frustration and more about connection, about the unseen threads that bind people together. Then, one evening, her window went dark. Not just for a night, but for a week. Then, too, the glowing rectangle was a black hole. Leo's world, which had slowly been filling with color, drained back to gray. He realized with a jolt how much he had come to rely on her presence, on the silent validation of her light. He had been writing for her. Without his audience, the words dried up. He finally mustered the courage to go downstairs and ask the super of her building. The artist. Yeah, Ms. Vance. She had a show opening in Berlin. A big deal. She'll be gone another month. Relief and a strange, sharp loneliness washed over him. She hadn't vanished. She had succeeded. The world had discovered his secret muse. The night she returned, he saw the light go on. His heart leapt. He watched as she moved around her studio, unpacking a box. She walked to the window and looked across, directly at him. This time, he didn't look away. She lifted her hand in a slow, deliberate wave. He waved back. The next evening, a new package was lowered. It was a small, flat canvas. He hauled it up, his hands trembling. It was a painting of his window. From her perspective, he saw his own desk, his lamp, the silhouette of a man hunched over his work, and on his desk, clearly visible, was the little painted rock she had sent him months ago. She had been watching him too, all this time. Taped to the back was a gallery invitation for her show in Berlin. On the bottom, she had written a note. "Your turn. Persist." Leo sat down at his desk, and for the first time in weeks, the words came easily. He wasn't just writing for an audience of one anymore. He was writing to a collaborator, a fellow traveler. The window across the alley was no longer an escape. It was a mirror reflecting back a version of himself he was finally starting to believe in. A writer seen and encouraged by the most important critic of all.